We're afraid to spend the money, but you always have to spend money to make money. That's just a common saying we hear all the time, right? But it's actually true. Like if you spend the money, you will make more money. It will give you a different presence.
Hey everybody, this is Eddie Babbage, founder, CEO of Timeline Genius, your host here of the Wedding Industry Insider podcast, back with another great episode for you. I am here with Julian Leaver, founder and principal of Julian Leaver Events, a destination wedding planning company that works stateside and worldwide. Julia, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here with me and to do this interview.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Absolutely. This one's been a while in the making, and I'm really happy to be doing it. Just to kind of let people know what they're going to get from this interview, you and I are going to be talking about a topic that, as a tech entrepreneur myself, it's very near and dear to my heart, which is data driven decisions.
Mhm.
It's very important and powerful. So we're going to talk about that. You also are doing something in your career that, despite the fact that I've talked to gazillions, as my kids like to say, wedding planners, I've not heard of anybody that's doing something that you are now doing as a career opportunity. We're going to talk about that. Before we do, Julian, would you mind just giving people, in your own words, a synopsis of your background and just tell them how you got to be where you currently are in our industry?
Absolutely. I got the bug for events actually a little early on. I went to school at the University of Oklahoma, and I actually was there to study international studies and negotiation because I thought I was going to go and work for the State Department and kind of be a diplomat. That was the initial goal. But I quickly realized that I was going to need to put myself through college. And so, because of that, I needed to get a job. And looking around the landscape of Norman, Oklahoma, which is actually where I was born and raised, there's just not that many great career opportunities for a college student. It was like Arby's, which actually I tried. It was horrible. I was not successful there. There's the library, right? Or I could start something on my own. And so I was in a fraternity at OU, and a bunch of my friends obviously were in sororities. And so I started a business that was called Method Events, and I did sorority parties. And it was fun. It was scrappy. I had $1. Sororities have $1 to spend, and so I learned a lot. I kind of looked around my friend group. I made everybody do different roles. So some people were going to be the bartenders, and other people were going to do the food, and other people were going to do the security. And then I bought all of the basically party props and stored them in a storage facility there in Norman, and off we went. And I just got the bug. I realized that I loved events, that I loved the rush of events, and I realized that maybe the diplomatic side was not going to be for me, but I needed to learn more about events. And so I left OU and went to work for the parent company of USA Today, and I did corporate events for a little while there, which was really not my jam, but I learned a lot, and I got to travel, which kind of helped with my travel bug piece of things, and spent some time in New York and all up and down the East Coast, and then ultimately ended up in Dallas and working for Rosewood Hotels and Resorts, which
Mhm.
they gave me a huge understanding of how kind of the social space works in events. And so I worked for the Crescent Hotel first as a catering manager. And then I went to work for Bella Flora, which is like a big wedding and event production firm. And so I learned decor and rentals and floral and event planning. And then back to Rosewood over both the Mansion and the Crescent. And then now, almost 10 years ago, started
Wow.
this business, Julian Leaver Events. So it's been a wild ride.
That is amazing, Julian. I love just, I mean, the wealth of experience, and the years do go quickly. I mean, it is funny to see, I
Mhm.
speak, firsthand from my own experience. It's weird how the years go. But each year, each month, each week, if we're doing things right, brings with it the treasure of new knowledge and improvement. So, Definitely going to unpack this. My first question for you, Julian, is how does all of this preceding experience that you've had, kind of coming at the industry from different vantage points, corporate, catering, venue, how does that varied experience play out in your current role?
It's amazing, honestly. I use every single thing that I've learned from all of these years every single day. And I would
Mm.
say the thing that's been really helpful was understanding how all of those different businesses make their dollars, right?
Why is
Because
that so helpful? Okay, go ahead. That's fascinating.
yeah, because it helps you deploy a client's dollars in a very strategic way, right?
Mm.
Like I know that in hotels do not make a ton of dollars in the catering piece of a wedding, but they make all of their money in heads and beds, right? And
Mm.
so they make money in rooms. So there's negotiating space in rooms, right? So it just makes understanding how everyone kind of makes their dollars. How does a florist make their dollars? How does a rental company make their dollars? How does a linen company make their dollars? And so, in understanding how all those things work, you can better deploy your clients' dollars to really maximize their impact.
I love that, Julian. There's something I am rereading a book right now with my 11-year-old. It's the Arnold Schwarzenegger memoir called Total Recall.
Okay.
And there's this part that just like, I mean, he's just this like really fascinating guy. Grows up in the countryside in Austria, goes on to become a big movie star and governor of California. I mean, it's just kind of like, how in the world did this ever happen? But he's
American
talking
dream.
about working on, yeah, exactly. He's talking about working on the first Terminator film with
Hmm.
James Cameron. This is before James Cameron was really on the map. And he said you could see the genius of the man
Hmm.
because he knew the lighting, he knew directing, he knew like the music. He's like he just knew every part of what was happening. Now, obviously, he didn't know the lighting as well as the like head of lighting, but
Yeah.
like he had knowledge of all of this, and it allowed him to work at this sort of higher level that other people did. My question for you is for people that maybe haven't had and won't have, in all likelihood, the opportunity to spend significant time kind of doing these other jobs, is there something they can do to break out of kind of the tunnel vision of just, well, I'm a wedding planner and I'm just focused on this? Is there an intentional way that they can kind of expand their knowledge and expertise and learn more and kind of absorb a little bit of what you're getting at from your varied background?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just about kind of this knowledge and seeking, really like a seeking information standpoint, right?
Mm,
I think that's what
mm,
makes us all better all the time is to go and sit with a person that you want to learn more about the business, right? And I think in Julian Leaver Events, we're doing this always. We're soliciting feedback constantly. We're soliciting feedback from our clients. We're soliciting feedback from every single vendor that we work with on every single wedding. Even if it's the same vendor we've worked with again and again and again, we send a form, right? We send a survey every single wedding. And so you're soliciting this information and they're saying, oh, hey, could we think about this next time? Or, hey, what if we did this? Or, hey, you did a great job and we have nothing to suggest. And those are the best ones, right? When you're just like, okay, great, we're doing good. But
ding.
it's about, say, let's take stationery, for example, right? Like, there's different processes in stationery and sometimes we don't have the time to understand exactly like why the timeline is x y and z in the thick of the timeline, but when you have the downtime, whatever your off season is, because everybody's off season is a little slightly different, right? Some people it's in the summer, some people it's in the winter. It just depends on where you're located. But I think take the off season and take the off season and go and speak with maybe three of the vendors in the categories that you work with all the time, right? Go
Mm,
and learn stationery
mm,
off season. Go and learn floral this off season. Go and learn rentals this next off season. And go and just sit with the people and come with questions and then be open to hearing the feedback. Because if you can adjust your process and shift with them, then the better off you're going to be working together the next time. And it also makes you just a better planner, especially in the destination space, because every time we're working with some new vendor. right? You don't get to duplicate your same group of people every single time in destination events. Maybe you can keep the same stationer, but you're going to work with a bunch of other different people. So practicing the art of asking questions and then listening to the answers, like actually listening to them, and then implementing that in your business will set you apart and apart and apart. And those little tiny steps and little tiny tweaks, 10 years later, you look and you're like, oh, wow, this is amazing what we built here.
Brilliant. I love that so much, Julian. And this is such a natural segue into talking about data driven because that's what you're talking about. And I think a couple of things. One, I want to just shout this out up front to our wedding planners. Like it could be easy to hear data and have the eyes glaze over, like, oh
Mm.
God, we're talking about like Google Analytics and all this techie. So not necessarily, right? I don't think that's really the core of where we're going. And secondly, for your own context, just so you know, you kind of understand where my head is, and for our listeners as well, you are hearkening to one of the greatest entrepreneurial sort of concepts that I've uncovered. This is my third company, Timeline Genius, and there was something that was very fashionable, I would say maybe 10, 15 years ago. It's called the lean startup methodology.
Mm-hmm.
And to remove the jargon, the whole idea was if you want to build a product or service, go talk to the people that you're planning to deliver this service to, right? And you're talking about this a little more expansively. It's like not just the client but also the different vendors, but this powerful tool can be used in all of those ways you just described. And it is, you have ideas in your head about like what's going to please this person, what their needs are, what will make you great in their eyes. You
Mm-hmm.
do not know if what's in your head matches reality until you start talking to those people. So in my case, it was just asking wedding planners, what's the most tedious part of your job and challenging all of my assumptions. But this notion of applying that data gathering feed like system to these other
Mm-hmm.
areas sounds so powerful. Is this something that you did from the start of your company? Like, did you just kind of right out of the gate start asking people about like their
Almost right out of the gate, like 10 years ago, right out of the gate, was just sending a survey, sending a survey, sending a survey, sending a survey, and asking this information and really automating it. And it's been pretty cool, just the response, because people in the beginning, they're like not quite, they don't know if they can be like really honest with it. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
you're soliciting feedback, but like, are you
Right,
really soliciting?
right, right, right.
And so I think it's just like a conversation with people, like I am soliciting feedback. I really do want to know what it is that we could have done better, and or what part of your process that we need to understand in a better and more efficient way,
I
you know?
love that.
And it's interesting because every different company works in a different format. Like some people are just more inherently last minute, and some people are incredibly prepared. And that can happen in the same vendor category. Like I take stationery again as an example as a planner, where we have to pivot and adjust our data based on how we're delivering for a specific vendor, right? We had one vendor earlier this year. The wedding was happening in May, and they have a very involved process because it's all hand done. And so, because it's all hand done, they need that information basically right in the thick of us providing all the information for a wedding that's only happening kind of the next month, as
Right.
opposed to then they need that information like 5 months in advance, but we don't have that information yet. And so it's important to understand that if we're going to work with this vendor, we need to have all that information buttoned up 5 months in advance, because they're going to have to hand paint every single piece of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these other stationers that we work with, someone just literally told us 3 weeks was a fine timeline, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so those are two very different situations. And so you have to pivot and understand your own, almost like internal clients. Everyone is a client to a wedding planner, because the wedding
Right.
planner is sitting kind of at the fulcrum, right? You have your actual clients, but then you have all your internal clients who you are also trying to manage and understand the timelines and deliver in the most efficient and productive way possible to get the best result. And so if you're not listening to those internal clients, then everyone is going to fail.
I love that, Julian. So I want to just tackle something else here that I feel
Mhm,
like could easily be a mental block for people as they're listening to us right now. As you know, Julian, the life of the wedding planner, like you're so busy, there's so much going on. The notion of adding something new to your plate can
mhm.
just be like overwhelming, and it could cause somebody to just shut down and be like, this sounds kind of good. I got a wedding plan right now. I can't even listen. So what I
Yeah,
want to do to just like kind of preemptively, address that is, um, let's say somebody's listening and they're like, okay, this sounds pretty good. Maybe I should think about doing some surveys, etc. What would you say to them if they kind of think, I don't know that I have the time for this. This sounds a little overwhelming. Is it worth doing? How can, like, what would you say to that person just about
yeah.
that?
I would say gather the information first. Gathering the information is actually the easiest part of the whole
Okay.
process. And so
Okay.
take your time. You can tweak your process in like basically three little steps to gather this information. And then you can take a break, right? Like just gather it. And if people respond and they fill out the survey, then that's amazing. And then like in 6 months, you can go back and take a look at it, right? And see what it says, or when you actually can take a deep breath, you know? And then if you're in your kind of off season right now, it's a very easy tweak. And then once your season starts again, then you can gather the information and then follow up on it at the end. But I would say it's a pretty simple process. The way that we do it is we actually have a form on our website that gathers all the information and then when they click submit, it literally just sends you an email. And then we file that away in a tab called vendor feedback. And then we go back and we look at it when it all comes in. It's easy to build that form. You can do it on your website. It's something either you could do very easily. It's basically like a contact form, or your web developer can do it for you. And then we literally automate the email for it to go out on the Sunday after the wedding. So you can pre-schedule it. It literally just sends it and then off you go.
I love that. And I love this, Julian. This is exactly what I like to accomplish with this podcast is to give
Mhm.
people concrete, actionable things that they can take back to their business today to start making it incrementally better. So we're going to go into this data gathering and we'll get to the analysis and action
Mhm.
as well. Um, let's just start with this. Do you build this out as a form? You said on your website, so you're not using like Typeform.
No,
I
it's actually
suppose you
just on our
could, or go
website.
ahead.
You could use Typeform if you
Yeah,
wanted, or
yeah,
you could use a
right.
Google form, whatever you wanted. We use Show It. And
Okay,
so we just built it as a separate page on our website that's just
gotcha.
feedback. And we have
Okay,
one for clients and we have one for internal clients, so
okay.
vendors. And
Mm-hmm.
then we just send out a separate one to each one. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it just prompts them. It's short. It's not a crazy long form, and it also doesn't require that they fill out um, every single field. And
Yeah.
so we found if it doesn't require them to fill out every single field, they're more often will fill out all the information. And I would say we do it very close to the wedding. So we send the vendor one on Sundays and we
Mm-hmm.
send the client one on Mondays. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it's just in their inbox. And honestly, they get to their honeymoon if they're the client and they're like, oh, I'm sitting on the beach. I'd love to fill out this form. Oh, I'm getting the preview photos. I feel really good about it. And then they're really honest. They'll say, like, this was great. This was great. This was great. Oh, wait, we could improve this tiny little thing here or X, Y, and Z. And then we just get better.
It's so powerful, and I just can't help, Julian, reflecting. I mean, this is literally one of the most powerful things that I did as an entrepreneur was, and you said the magic word too, listening.
Hmm.
Like because it's easy to just we have so many things that we're thinking about, that phenomenon, somebody's talking, you're like, I'm just ready for them to stop so I can say my thing. Like, no, we're
Exactly.
talking about like really listening, and there's so much that we can learn when
Hmm.
we open up and listen to other people. I gotta ask again,
Our
go ahead,
clients,
go ahead.
I'm just going to say it's so important because I am always saying our clients are telling us exactly who they are. They're
It's so
telling us
true.
exactly. They're
Yeah.
they're saying it in every single decision. They're saying
Yeah.
it in every single action that they take. They're telling us again and again and again and again. And I think it's interesting because the other piece of it here too is they're telling you through the process who they are. And so you just have to be listening throughout the entire process to understand that. And we do someone was asking me the other day about where does design fall into our process, you know? And it really falls later into the process because we want to take as much time to listen to the client as possible so that when we get to the design process, we have
Mm,
listened and they have told us exactly who they are. So we nail it right on the head. And so sometimes we push that information off because we're like, no, 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 we need you to tell us how you want it to feel with the band there. We want you to tell us how you want it to feel with the photography when you open it up. Like, how do you want that to feel? When you're watching the video, how do you want that to feel? So they're telling us all this information. We're gathering all of that information. We're understanding it all. So by the time we get to the design, it's very clear they've told us already who they are.
I love that. Yeah, and a few questions here. Well, let's just start with I definitely don't want to forget to ask this. If you don't mind sharing, what are the specific questions or form fields
Oh
on
yeah.
each of the on your vendor feedback form and your client feedback form?
Yeah. Let me go and tell you.
Yeah, again, I just love kind of giving people like the concrete specifics, and I'm kind of seeing just like a sort of 1, 2, 3 step plan here, like how to implement this data gathering
Yeah.
system for your business, you know?
It basically says vendor survey. It asks for their name. It asks for their email. It has them type in their business name. Then it says the first question is, what obstacles did we help you overcome during the planning or execution of this event? First
Mm,
question, very easy. Second question, did the JLE team do anything that made your job easier or more stress free?
mm,
Then the third question is, how did working with the JLE team compare to your experience with other planners or vendors?
mm.
And then the fourth and last question is, are there any areas in which we can improve in the future?
Love it. And
And then
which
the,
of those fields is required? Because I mentioned that because like you said, you don't necessarily want to for somebody could see that one of those is required and be like, I can't do all that. Like, what
the
did you
only
require?
required ones are the name, email, and business name. That's it.
Okay.
Everything else,
And do you
pretty open.
find that making it not anonymous? I feel like this is the right step, but I just want to hear. I mean, I guess you need to know who's giving this feedback, right? And if
You
that
do need
deters
to know.
somebody, yeah,
Yeah, you do need to know because I think it's also we're pretty open
yeah,
about this
yeah,
in the process, you know, about like, hey, this is going to come. We really do want you to be as honest as possible. And I would say people are very honest because I want
okay,
to be able to then get on the phone and say, let's have a conversation. And where did this breakdown in communication happen, or et cetera, et
yes,
cetera, et cetera. And
yes,
then
yes.
we all are better, you know?
You just actually preempted a couple of questions that I had. One was going to be if it's not anonymous, do you have to kind of contort yourself a little bit to really get people to open up and be candid? Because I've found a lot of people like they don't want to tell you the bad thing, even though they're actually doing you a great service. If
Hmm.
not if they're being nasty, but if somebody's in a professional tone, just telling you like, look, this is the thing that I think you didn't really do well, that's valuable, but a lot of people still might not want to share. Do you have to kind of what do you do to kind of coax the truth out and the candor out of people?
Honestly, I have never had to, really.
Okay.
People
Okay.
have just been honest.
Okay.
I think they
Cool.
love the fact that it's done in an email, like typing.
Yes.
There is,
Yes.
for some reason, the typing of it all and being able to say what you need to say and send
Yes.
it is very maybe therapeutic or cathartic. I find that if I'm sent one of these forms, you know, I'm like, hey, this thing like didn't quite work well, you know, and let's figure out how to do it better in the future. But we've had very like clear, honest, good feedback. So it hasn't been too much of the coaxing.
And my second question, you've already kind of spoken to a big thing for me in collecting feedback that just was transformative in the building and improving of my own business and product was, and I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here, right?
Mhm.
Was hearing people like, um, in real time, hearing the emotion in their voice, being able to ask clarifying questions rather than just kind of like a one way sort of form. What I'm hearing from you, and correct me if this is wrong, is that you're kind of doing both. Like you get this form feedback, but when you can see that there's something deeper to be discussed, you're on the phone or Zoom or whatever with that person. Am I getting
Oh,
that right?
100%. We will get
Okay.
on the phone. We will do a
Yes.
recap call. We will get on a Zoom, whatever. I need to just see your face and like understand exactly what happened. Like I'm very
Hmm.
old school that way. Like I love a phone call.
Me too. Okay, I'm old school like that, and it's never going to stop.
Get
I'm
through
with you.
it. You're going to hear the
Yeah.
tone. You're going to know
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly what's going on. What is
Yes.
stressing you out?
Yes.
Like, tell me
Yes.
what's going on, you know?
Yes.
And then usually we can solve it because like at the end of the day, we're planning weddings, you know? It's not we're not performing surgery. There are things that we can usually kind of nip in the bud almost before they happened if we can just get on the phone.
And do you find, Julian, that sometimes the follow up phone call conversation becomes an event that allows you to really nurture your bond with that
Oh yeah,
person?
it's
Does that,
definitely
yeah.
it definitely makes you feel like you've been heard.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard you. I've read exactly what you said, and I acknowledge whatever it is that you said, and then I'm going to take it to heart. And this is the thing I think about all wedding professionals. I always say we're hashtag children of trauma, right? Because we're
Mm,
all just trying to like uh, take care of that inner child in us. Like we all are seeking approval, and so when things don't go well, we are our own worst critic.
mm,
And so even if something has gone wrong, like we're not trying to pile on. We're just going to say,
mm,
hey, look, this went wrong. You know that this went wrong. We can both admit that this went wrong. And let's just agree that you don't do this again, next time. And I found almost with every single wedding vendor, it doesn't matter because there is a creative in almost every element of this business the inner creative is definitely just like, beating themselves up worse than anyone could ever beat themselves up, worse than the client could ever. And because we really want these days to go so perfectly. And so I think it needs to be done just with a lot of kindness and a lot of caring um, and trust that someone was honest with you and that then you're going to be kind back to them. And so that then creates this whole conversation and cements your reputation with that other person, and then you have really a friend for life.
I love that. Yeah, it's weird. And sometimes, I think about that. Like if there's a support issue or something like
Mhm.
on our Timeline Genius platform, you would think, well, that's a bad interaction. But I can't tell you how many long lasting positive relationships have been formed over the years by people that may be having an issue, but just need to be heard. And
Mhm.
also, obviously, know that like it's not enough to just hear it and be like, I'm not going to do anything, but like to be heard and to kind of have that dialogue, it really does turn into like the soil for like a relationship. What is the so to kind of and I'm just like rapid firing here because I
Yeah,
know there's
no, great.
so many gold nuggets to get from you before I let you go. What are the actual questions on your other form?
Oh yeah, okay, let me get
Sorry
that.
about that. We're jumping
No,
around here, but
it's okay.
this is good stuff.
Okay, here we go. The questions on the other form are the name and the email again, and those are the only two required
Hmm.
ones.
Hmm.
The first question is, what was most important to you when looking for a planner?
Mm.
The second one is, what were your biggest concerns about your event? The third one is, why did you feel you needed a planner? Your fourth
Oof.
one is, what were your biggest concerns in finding slash hiring a planner? Then ultimately, why did you select Julian Leaver Events over someone else you were considering? And then describe the experience of working with Julian Leaver Events. And then any advice for others considering hiring a planner? And then is there anything else you think I should know or any additional comments you'd like to share?
As a wedding planner, you know how important it is to create detailed wedding day timelines for your events. But creating your timelines can be a tedious and time-consuming job. Until now. Because Timeline Genius lets you create beautiful, detailed wedding day timelines with ease. And it keeps everything you need on the wedding day in one central place. Here's how it works. First, Timeline Genius saves all your clients, vendors, and venues in your Rolodex, so you don't lose time looking for their information. And when you're ready to create a new timeline, you simply enter the key information for your wedding. Click a button, and voila! Timeline Genius magically gives you a customized timeline for your event, where all the details are laid out and the times are calculated for you. From there, you can easily edit your timeline by adding or deleting items, inserting images, changing font styles, and customizing everything to your liking. You can also instantly shift the times for as many items as you want. And when it comes to your clients and vendors, Timeline Genius lets you give them the highest level of service. You can send them tailored timelines, showing only the items they're involved in. And you can collaborate by inviting them to a mobile-friendly, web-based version of the timeline. You can even set text message reminders to automatically go out on the wedding day. And once you've completed your perfect timeline, you can download it or email it out as a beautifully styled PDF. And that's Timeline Genius, a smart software that will help take your wedding planning to the next level. Start your free trial today.
Whew, that's fire, as my kids like to say. I'm almost jealous, Julian, because first of all, again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record. The answers, the information that you're gathering, and we're going to tease this out. I'm going to let you speak much more colorfully and in much more detail, but
Mhm.
sounds like pure gold to
It
me.
is gold,
It
Fred.
it reminds me of like the information when I remember I had an advisor in the early days when I was working on Timeline Genius, and I was asking like, what's the biggest problem you have in your business? How do you currently do your timelines? Where would you hear about a service like Timeline Genius if it were out there? All that, like, he was like, Eddie, the information that you're gathering right now is going to be the foundation of this business. And that is so true. Like, listening to and understanding the minds and hearts and needs of the people that you serve, it's just like so valuable. And I'm a little jealous, Julian, because in my line of business, it can be harder to get that feedback. I mean, we get it, but in your case, it's not like you're dealing with like thousands of people every year. Like,
No.
you've got a relationship with this client, you've got relationships with these vendors. I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, you get a pretty high percentage of people that you work with to fill these forms out. Is that correct or
Almost
no?
every single client. Almost
Oh
every
my
single
God.
client.
I'm
I think
so
it's like a
jealous. That's amazing.
90 return. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
because they're so excited. I think it's also
Yeah.
about when it's sent, right? The key also is when it's sent. People are like, oh, this is cool. This was different. This is
Mm,
nice. And
mm,
like, oh, wow, they really are actually interested in my opinion, you know?
totally. And
Wow.
wow. So, all right, so you get this information, people,
Mhm.
you may not know the answer to this because this isn't kind of in the realm of just your experience and knowledge by
Mm.
definition. It strikes me that just the mere fact or act of doing this is going to set you apart because I could be wrong because I haven't asked a lot of planners if they do this.
A lot of players do not do this. I'll
That's what
tell
I figured. Like, you're in a minority just by the very act of collecting this information, right?
you. I would say yes.
Okay. So I think we've gone through, and I love it. This is simple. We're not telling people there's some 50-hour work stream that they need to like
Not
introduce
at all.
every week.
Not
Like,
at all.
this is really simple. You need a templated email to go out to your
Mhm.
clients, to go out to your vendors, and you
Yep.
need a form for your clients and a form for your vendors. So let's assume people get really excited. They're like, wow, we're hearing these guys like geek out and vibe about the power of this information. I'm in, I'm going to set it up. And I love what you said too, Julian. You don't have to do anything else with this if you're already busy in your season or whatever. But
Yeah.
let's say that somebody wants to take the next step and they
Mhm.
say, I've got my forms, I've got my emails, they're going out, data's coming in. What do I do with this?
Yeah. And so then I think like the initial stuff is about like the triage, right? Like that's the initial part is like you do need to look at the form. Like if there was a problem and someone has like really addressed a problem with you, then you need to like immediately deal with that problem,
Sure.
right? Do not leave that, friends. Like that is not the advice I am giving.
Right. No, that's a good
Issue,
caveat.
you need to get on the phone and you need to sort it out,
Of
like
course.
move on,
Yes.
like
Yes.
sort it out.
Definitely.
The rest of the information is really cool to be able to understand who your buyers are. Okay. So here I have to give the shout out. All right. This shout out goes to Sam Jacobson with ID Action Consulting. Okay. Because this is how the information that you gather is how you realize who your buyers really are. Okay. That's, I think, probably the easiest first step of understanding this. So Sam Jacobson talks about kind of these 4 buyer types. And honestly, you can go and listen to his podcast. That's like a whole nother topic. I am not the expert in that area. I just follow the advice. Okay. But what this information does do is it tells you what people are worried about and what they are concerned about in making their decision, right? And so just to give a quick overview, there's 4 different buyer types. There's a boss buyer, a dreamer buyer, a relator buyer, and an analyzer buyer. And each of them, based just like hearing those names, you kind of realize like what's important to them, right? Like the boss is very much worried about like the outcome, right? They're not worried about the details. They could give 2 fucks, basically. They are worried about the outcome. So they're going to tell you they're worried about the outcome. The dreamer is worried about like, how's it look, right? They're worried about the vibe. They're worried about the look. They're worried about how is everyone feeling in the whole process, right? The relator is worried about how are we making a connection? Is the experience good? Like what is happening with the experience and are we connecting? And then the analyzer is worried about the bottom line, right? And so through those questions, they're telling you the answers to who they are. And so the beauty of doing this over a long period of time, like in collecting a data set that goes for 10 years, is that you see where your clients are and how your client might be changing. And then you're going to use that information and like shift your marketing strategy or shift your Instagram or shift all those things. But that's like a whole nother, we could go for hours and hours and hours, Eddie, and talk about all this. But I think the most important piece, like the very most important piece, is that they are telling you who they are as a buyer.
And go ahead. Go ahead. There's
going.
so much here to unpack. Well, what I was going to just jump in and say is, as a buyer, like what I'm kind of mapping this onto in my mind is the idea of nailing down your ideal client profile or avatar.
Telling you exactly who your ideal client is. And it's also telling you when your client shifts, because there's different parts in your business where, like, I will say, I very much started in the analyzer relator category because usually it's like a twofer, right? So like one of the types is marrying the other type. So you're kind of like they're in a grid and they're always kind of going side by side. They never go across. So like a boss and a relator are never like really marrying each other, and a dreamer and an analyzer are never really marrying each other. They're kind of marrying through the process. And so I started here, and then now my clients are primarily like boss dreamers, right? And so, but it's taken 10 years to shift all the way around that grid to get to this place. And so that's the most important piece of information, I think, initially, is like you see when the shift actually happens.
That is so cool, Julian. Yeah, it makes me think of I feel like it was Russell Brunson, like the marketing genius. He was like, you only need one thing to have a business. It's not a product. It's not business cards. It's not a website. It's a customer.
Exactly.
And there's nothing more important. I feel like that is one of the like key lessons that has been kind of drilled into my psyche over the last however many decades is like, you've got to understand who you're marketing to. It drives like everything from, your messaging to your marketing channels. So once you're zeroed in on your client, like who it is that you're serving, what do you do tactically with that information? Does it affect like your website copy? Like, how do you personally in your business
100%.
make use of that?
Yeah. I mean, I will say the website copy is a great example. Thank you, Eddie, for setting that up so nicely. I
There
would
you
say, like,
go.
for example, in the beginning, like with the analyzer and the relator, the website copy is a lot more heavy, right? There's more of it. It's a little bit meatier. They're looking at different things. But like to give you an example, headlines on your website, like the biggest text is what the bosses are reading. They're reading that. They're reading that and skipping everything else, right? The dreamers are looking at all the images on your website. They're also looking at the design of your website. Does it feel like what they want their wedding to feel like? Right? They're not reading as much. They're still reading, but they're mostly worried about the images. Right? The relator is dealing with kind of like the secondary headings. They're like, okay, this is good. Like it makes sense. It's relating to what I want. And then also they're more about the information that's on your site, right? Like, do you have a blog? And then I can go and like find out some more things and read some more things. The relator is also looking very much at the quotes that you're using on your website as social proof, and also kind of if you've been published somewhere, that information, because they want like some confirmation that other people have had more experience with you, right? And then the analyzer is really like getting into like the paragraphs of it all, and then very deeply analyzing the blog. Like, what have you said? Why did you say it? Have you given me a breakdown? Da, 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 da. And so they're all interacting with the website in different ways. And so a good example of how this has shifted over time is that the text on my site has gone from like a very heavy text site to now it's a much lighter
Mm.
text site in terms of all of the information that we're providing. We're just providing it in kind of a different way.
What is if you, that's really interesting, and this whole framework is honestly new to me. I'm gonna have you said Sam Jacobson's
Yeah.
podcast. Like if I listen to that, like can you
So
get like a
there he will there's so many episodes, it's like
okay,
you go down the deepest hole of all time. And what I will
okay,
say is this information is out there all the time, and I thank him all the time, and he keeps saying like, Julian, thank you for thanking me, but also you have to just do the work. Like the
right,
information is out there. If you
right,
take the information and then you actually implement it, that's when this change actually happens. It's when you take an action, right? You can listen to the podcast all day long. You can understand it all day long, but did you take an action to actually make a change in your business? And that's the most important part of all of this is I feel like I'm a tinkerer, right? Like I'm just tinkering over here, little tiny tweaks, little tiny here we are.
yeah, that's really powerful. And on that note, I mean, if somebody's been with us this whole time, if you're still listening to this interview, like just carve out the like couple hours or whatever to get all this done. I want to say it's smaller than that, but we all know things take longer than we think or
Yeah, they
whatever.
take
But
longer.
this
You
is
have to
not,
figure out how to do it on your
yeah,
website.
it
It's a
always,
whole investment,
but you
you
got to
know?
do it. Just get it done, get this information coming in, deal with the immediate fires. But, at the very least, you're collecting the other stuff. And I suspect we would all like find ways to utilize this. What I ask, my follow up to you, Julian, is can you think of a specific, like concrete, like big example or like meaningful example
Mhm.
of like how you took this information and I'm thinking of the clients for now. We'll talk about the vendors in a minute.
Yeah.
Some way in which like some information that you gathered allowed you to do something that concretely and significantly improved your business. Is there anything that maybe comes to mind in that vein?
Oh, that's a good
I
question.
mean, you already told me redoing the site, which is a huge thing in and of itself
Yeah.
because that's the first touch point people have in a lot of cases.
Yes.
Anything else kind of come to mind? A way that you've leveraged this information to get real value?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been in like the little tiny tweaks, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
for example, I'll just give you
yeah.
a very concrete example. So in 2022, I had a client um, who was probably my biggest client up to that point, right, in my business.
Yeah.
And he, on his feedback form, he said, I loved everything. It was great. Um, but I would say, you really need to get like a branded conference line. That would really take your business to kind of the next level, right?
Hmm.
So that literally the next day I got a branded conference line, and it's those little
And it
tiny,
adds up.
it
Yeah.
just adds up. It's like you
Yeah.
add another piece and another Lego and another Lego and another Lego and another Lego, and all of a sudden you have a castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's those little tiny things and actually taking the information and then really truly implementing it. That is where people get stuck, is
Right.
they don't just do the implementation really quickly, like right then. And what I would say about that piece of things is that if you cannot do it yourself, or you do not have the time to do it yourself, then
Hmm.
hire it out. Hire
Hmm.
out the things that you do not know
Right.
how to do.
Right.
It doesn't cost that much, and it will, in the long run, be amplified tenfold. And
Yeah.
so I think we're afraid to spend the money, but you always have to spend money to make money. That's just a common saying we hear all the time, right? But it's actually true. Like, if you spend the money, you will make more money. It will give you a different presence. It will shift the way that you're running your business. And if you do little tiny things like that, if you do 5 little tiny things like that a year, then in 10 years, it's like a totally different ball game.
That is very well articulated. It makes me think, Julian, and I really do think, despite the question I asked, that a lot of this stuff is kind of fuzzier and intangible by nature. It makes
Mhm.
me think of this. There's this guy was like paying some really high consulting fee. He was like a marketing, like a SaaS marketing just guru. And we
Mhm.
were talking about branding, like the idea of getting your website right, like knowing, like, am I leaning into imagery or headlines or what, like all the things you were just saying. And
Mhm.
he said, Eddie, when you get your messaging and your positioning and this kind of client sort of fit right, it just is going to be like your business is moving with the current. Like
Mhm.
you're not fighting against the current anymore, like you're in the groove. And I feel like it's not a specific concrete one-off thing that happens. It's more of a, like you're saying, putting pieces in place, and then you're kind of with the current. My question for you also, though, Julian, is what are you doing? I get the value of the client information clear as day.
Mhm.
What are you doing with this information that's coming in from your vendors?
Yeah, I mean, I think the vendor information is just more, it's mostly communication driven, I will say. It's mostly about how are we communicating the information and at what times are we communicating the information. And I think it is, for example, here's a good example. We used to do send all the information to photo, video, kind of just in an email. Here's all the information, da 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 da, right?
Hmm.
There was a wedding that we did in 2023. It's 23. I think it was 23, the beginning of
Hmm.
23. But this occurred in 22. And the vendor basically said, hey, what I'd really like moving forward for us is to do just a quick Google Meet, just like a 20-minute quick Google Meet, go through the schedule all together and talk through this and plan out these photos a little bit differently for the next one that we're going to do, because I kind of want to try this new thing. And so we did that for the next one. And so that was the wedding that happened in 2023 and in January. And in December of 22, we got on a call. We went through the whole schedule. We boom, 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 boom. How does this all look to you? What can we tweak? What can we tweak? What can we tweak? And it gave us the time at that wedding in 23 to open up the schedule for some other more special photos. And that wedding ended up in Vogue, right? And
Hmm.
so there are some very concrete changes that you can make by listening to your vendors when they put that information on the form, and then by tweaking that information, and then you can actually have an outcome that really can shift your business.
I love it. I love it, Julian. We said this, already at the in the pre-interview, that we could talk about data for hours. Like
All day long.
literally, there's always, so I'll have to have you back on. But I want to change gears. And first, I'm going to do a little plug for Timeline Genius, but I want to change gears because
Yeah.
you have a project going that, despite the fact that I've talked to just so many planners, I've never heard of anybody kind of venturing out in this direction. And I think it's useful and inspiring to talk about. So, but quickly, for anybody that's doing wedding day timelines, go to timelinegenius.com. If you haven't already checked out the site, definitely check it out. It is hands down, far and away, the best, most time efficient way for you to create beautiful, detailed, customized timelines for your weddings. We also have a checklist feature set that is first in the industry. Just go check it out. Start a free trial, watch the demo video. It will change your life. So, yeah, as I mentioned, Julian, really excited because I want to tell people about this innovative new line of business that you have. Will you go ahead and just kind of tell people about this project that you're working on and kind of how it came to be?
Yeah. So I wanted to solve a problem, right? That was being, I mean, somewhat driven by data. And so I have actually teamed up with the lighting designer that we primarily work with, whose name is Jacob Tao with Jacob Co-Creative. They do lighting and basically lighting design. And we have actually invented a next generation generator that is solar powered. And it is really, it's for the wedding industry. It will be for other industries as well, but we're starting in the wedding industry. And it's got some really cool features. The number one kind of thing about it is that it's silent, which is really a first for
Mm.
generators. And so you can actually put it by your event. It can go by a tent. It can go really kind of anywhere near the event that you might need power for, and it's silent. And it's actually aesthetically pleasing. It's black, so it kind of blends into the background. It disappears at night, which is great. And what's really cool about it is that it does 12 20 amp circuits for 12 hours flat. And so that's a big deal for wedding planners. It was a problem for me. This idea kind of all came about in COVID when we were doing a lot of tented weddings.
Mm.
And every week we were getting to the tented wedding, and then the price of diesel would change. And so there was going to be a new price for the client. And we had to explain the new price to the client. And the fluctuation was kind of all over the place. And they really don't have a choice at that point. Like, we have got to do this generator. And so you're just going to have to pay this new price. So the great thing about this product is that it is just a fixed price. It doesn't depend on really the price of a commodity. The other cool thing about it is that it actually has Starlink on board, and so you can provide internet for all of your vendors, and then you could open up to your guests as well if you wanted. And it has a mobile barometer and wind and rain valve on it so that you can actually measure what's happening at the location that you find yourself. So it's all really um, trying to solve for a lot of different problems, and it's all controlled by an app. So really, it's made so that you, as the planner, can control it all from the app wherever you might be. Even if you go off site, you still have access to all the cameras that are on it. You can see exactly what's happening at your job site, and you just have a lot of flexibility. So it's pretty cool, and a new product, and it's going to actually power its first wedding this coming weekend.
So cool. And I'll tell you, Julian, why. I mean, first of all, as I said in our pre-interview, I'm an entrepreneur and I just love entrepreneurial activity, thinking ideas, and finding ways to serve people through services that aren't already out there. But the real reason why I wanted to bring it up on this interview is twofold. First of all, I want people to know that it's out there. And secondly, I just think it's inspiring. I think that hopefully people listening, you're doing your job as a wedding planner, but always kind of have your eyes open to
Mhm.
opportunities. There's so many planners I've talked to that have found ways to kind of supplement the cyclical cash flow, because most people have a season and your cash flow can, as a result, be seasonal. But there can be these other angles that if we kind of have the right set of eyes, we see these opportunities. So going back to point one, wanting people to know that it's available, how can people learn more about this, Julian, and just potentially use the service or
Yeah,
product?
and you can find more about it at loopower.co. And then from there, you'll be able to download the app and then you'll be able to book it directly there. You'll kind of just plug in some information about what you're trying to power, and then we'll go from there. We're also working on an HVAC solution as well. So that will be coming in the near future. But yeah, it's interesting because I think there's these moments in our business where we have these breaks, right? And so sometimes in the break, we want to just look down and focus on the work of the business, the actual planning of the weddings, the planning of the weddings, the planning of the weddings. Whereas, like, what we really should be doing in those moments is looking up. Like, what does the horizon look like? What is coming next? What do I want to innovate on? What is something I could be doing better? And I think the idea of these surveys is gives you a starting place for figuring out what it is that you could be doing better, and then implementing a little bit of those ideas over time, over time, over time. And then an idea like this one with Lou has come about and actually come to fruition, which is amazing. It's been a 5-year process of doing this. So it's fun. It's interesting. This business has a lot of space, I think, for evolution. And so we just have to look at the data and then figure out what is the part that excites us and then go in that direction.
I love that. Love it, love it, love it. So the time here has flown as I knew it would, Julian. This was a fantastic interview. Everything that I want these to be, inspiration, knowledge, concrete steps that people can take to improve their business in meaningful ways. There's one question that I always ask at the end, and it's as follows. If you could give one piece of advice to everybody listening, especially our wedding planners out there who are just fighting to kind of climb and to reach toward their professional dreams, based on all of your experience from, not just your current company, but all of your varied experience, what would your one piece of advice be to help them as much as possible build their business?
I would say don't put your head in the sand. Your clients are telling you exactly what they want. Listen to them and take the action.
Mm, love that. Love it, love it, love it. Yep, puts the cherry on top, I think, of the interview there, Julian. If people want to connect with you,
Mhm.
what is the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, you can find us at julianleaver.com and on all the social channels at Julian Leaver. Very easy. I'm happy to DM, email, all the things.
Well, on behalf of our Timeline Genius community, Julian, and all of our Wedding Industry Insider podcast listeners, I just want to say thank you, not just for taking the time, but for being so transparent, and sharing, things that, a lot of people could be like, well, I'm not going to share this secret thing. I stand out because I do it and others don't. It's like a total opposite sort of blue ocean mentality that you have. And I thank you for, your time and for the wisdom you shared.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And this has been so much fun.